Dear friends, and dear older me, remember that time when we visited the French Riviera back in 2025? One of us dreamt about visiting as many of the towns along the Côte d'Azur as we could in a little over a week. I was happy to be a part of that dream, witness it come true. We've seen the beauty of these places with our own eyes. We enjoyed these happy days together and captured these moments for later because they were real and we existed. And this video is ours forever to remember. If our memories start to fade, or if we ever start to doubt they happened in the first place. So I'm turning those adventures now into reminders. After months of planning ahead for this trip, we decided to book 3 Airbnbs that would serve as our quote-unquote headquarters, each for about 3 nights respectively, and to visit not only the town we were staying in, but some other nearby locations as well, that were easily reachable via train or bus. The first Airbnb we booked was in Nice, near Port Lympia, close to Villefranche-sur-Mer and Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, not to mention the airport. The second one was in Beau-Soleil, right next to Monaco, within walking distance from the Monte Carlo Casino. So close to Monaco, in fact, that we thought we were staying in Monaco, really. Monaco being close to Menton to the east and Eze to the west. And finally, our third Airbnb for this adventure was in Cannes. Remember our walk towards the Promenade des Anglais on the 5th of July? We started from Port Lympia, in the heart of the city, admiring the many boats docked there. We looked at the colorful buildings across the street, warm colors, reds, yellows, oranges, their warm palette contrasting all the greens and blues of nature. Palm trees were showing us the way to the beach. We passed by the Monument of the Fallen on Roba-Capot, at the foot of the Chateau Hill, which we planned to visit later that day. The monument pays tribute to the people of Nice who died during the First World War. It's 32 meters high, built in the 1920s, dug straight into the rock. We could smell the salt and hear the seagulls among the bits of conversations strangers had as we passed by them. We found the Isle of Nice sign next, and kept glancing towards the calm sea. It was calm indeed that day, and more or less for our entire trip, actually. Remember how we climbed the stairs of Colline du Château, my dude? Apparently there is a lift, but we were running up that hill with no problems. I just had to make that joke, I'm sorry. The stairs we climbed are apparently called the Le Sage stairs. We made sure to stop at every point that offered great views over the Bay of Angels. The first one being the terrace on top of the Belanda Tower, where a street musician played his guitar as people enjoyed the panorama. Climbing further up the stairs, we found ourselves in the park on top of the hill. The park was created in 1822, more than a century after the chateau itself was destroyed in 1706 by the troops of Louis XIV. We were looking for the waterfall that was built here at the end of the 19th century. When we found it, people were chilling at its bowl, and seagulls at its top. Remember the panorama from this side of the park as well? We couldn't stay long though, as the sun was setting and the park was closing at 8 p.m. But it was enough. In our search for a place to have dinner later that evening, we explored another part of the city, Place Masséna, with its red buildings that were accentuated by the sunset, contrasted with the black and white checkered pavement, and decorated by the Fountain of the Sun with Apollo statue. Remember those interesting statues placed on top of pillars as we walked across the square? They are 10 meters above the ground. There's a total of 7 of them, and apparently they represent the 7 continents and communication between them, titled Conversation in Nice, created by the Spanish artist Jaume Plensa. Remember when we first saw them? We were in awe. Unfortunately, the birds will be birds up there. We continued to explore Place Masséna, taking in the views of sunset-lit streets, red and checkered remaining the keywords all along. Oh, but at night, I was not expecting them to be illuminated when the night falls. Glad we came back the same way after dinner so we could witness their randomly changing colors, which I've read are meant to suggest exchanges of dialogue between them, further emphasizing the title of the artwork. Too bad I was a bit tipsy and couldn't get better shots of them at night, even after I got separated from you guys for a bit when I stopped the film. One of you never let me hear the end of it. I was still new to this camera as well. Remember Villefranche-sur-Mer? We went there on Sunday, the 6th of July. We took a bus there from Nice. Remember our morning stroll around the citadel? We found out about it when one of us asked about local attractions at the tourism center in front of the bus station. The Saint-Elme citadel was built in the 16th century by order of the Duke of Savoy, Emmanuel Philibert, to serve as a defensive unit against assaults from the sea. The city council bought it in 1965, and today the citadel houses the city hall and the cultural center for museums, exhibitions, and events. Remember the impressive military architecture? It's an early example of a bastion fortification in Europe. The day was perfectly nice and sunny as we entered the citadel. Inside, going through medieval passageways, we were welcomed by its warmly colored courtyards. Remember the wonderful garden we stumbled upon? That small turret at its edge, with the colorful tiles, showed us incredible views of the sea through its openings. Another breathtaking panorama awaited us when we exited the citadel at its main gates and crossed its bridge. Remember how we walked across narrow streets with warmly colored buildings, up and down sets of stairs, catching glimpses of the sea. As we were looking for La Rue Obscure, the dark street. Remember the medieval atmosphere it created? Located in the old town of Villefranche, with a length of about 130 meters. It dates back to the 14th century, and along the years it had defensive and strategic purposes, allowing for better maneuvering of soldiers. After that, the beach was calling us, and we longed for a dip on that hot summer day. We passed along the harbor and looked at boats, seaside restaurants, and the mountains surrounding the coast. There were flowery walls at the edge of the sandy beach, a lively magenta adding even more color to an already colorful landscape. And on top of these walls We kept noticing the trains passing by as we enjoyed our time in the warm water. Remember that crab you found on our way back from the beach, my dude? It was on that lower step just below the sidewalk. Then we saw some other crabs around too. Remember how we thought we'd only have time to visit Villefranche that day? But in the afternoon, at around 3 p.m., we realized we could actually visit Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat as well. So we made our way to the bus station, climbing some steps surrounded by lush vegetation. So, another bus ride later, we were in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat. Remember our hike along the coast of the peninsula? We let the Sentier du Littoral guide us as we enjoyed the changes in our surroundings, from areas shaded by the forest to a narrow pathway guarded by bushes and branches, twisting and turning to sing the song of sea and mountain. The waves were breaking on the rocks just below our path. We stopped to look at them here and there as we were catching up on each other's lives. The path led us all the way to a pebbly beach where we relaxed after our hike and went for a quick dip. We stayed there until the sun went down, absorbed the views, created memories. Then we made our way back to Nice. Once in Monaco, we left our luggage at our Airbnb and went out to explore the city. We were at a 15-minute walk away from the famous Monte Carlo casino. Remember how busy that square was during the day? We admired the casino's architecture for a bit, knowing we'd return after we found something to eat. I couldn't pass by these amazing cars without filming them, of course, even though I'm not a big car guy normally. Remember how many such luxury cars we've seen out on the roads of Monaco? And besides the cars, remember the diversity of architecture we've seen that day? From new tall buildings to houses and structures with rich history, as well as a well-maintained or renovated aspect. We passed by the St. Charles Church, a Renaissance-style church commissioned by Prince Charles III at the end of the 19th century, the same prince who built the casino. After lunch, we returned to the casino as promised and went for a relaxing walk around it, exploring as much of the area as we could and taking in the majestic architecture of this historic building. The first casino in the area was built in the 1860s by order of the Prince of Monaco, Charles III, and later, in 1878, the casino was expanded and redesigned by the architect Charles Garnier in the Belle Époque style that we see today, with its rich ornamentation. Interestingly, Monegasque citizens are forbidden by law to play at the casino. Across the street from the casino and along the shoreline, we rested for a bit in this nice park. Then we made our way to the Prince's Palace. We got to see the harbor and more of the urban landscape of the city. Painted with its rich architecture, sculptures, and greenery. Its streets well kept and neat. Remember when we arrived to the palace? On top of Le Rocher de Monaco, or the Rock of Monaco, I've read that this rocky area on the side of Port Hercule is the oldest part of Monaco, and that legend says the demigod Hercules stopped by here during his journeys, hence the name of the port. The palace dates back to the year 1215, and it has undergone many changes along the centuries. The princely family is still living here. Remember the statue of François Grimaldi we saw in the courtyard? I've read that one night in 1297, François Grimaldi came to the fortress, disguised as a Franciscan monk, hiding his weapons under his cloak, and took over the rock. We had some great views overlooking the port and the city in the distance from here. And while still on the rock, we found ourselves on narrow streets full of souvenir shops. We continued to admire the architecture and visited the Cathédrale Notre-Dame Immaculée, built in 1875 in a Roman Byzantine style. The cathedral serves as a final resting place for several members of the royal family. Remember how we sat down on a bench for a bit here and watched the sea and the seagulls as the sun was starting to set? Then we started to descend from Le Rocher, taking in as much of the panorama as we could. We had dinner, and then discovered Monaco at night as well. On Tuesday, the 8th of July, we took the train from Gare de Monaco and went to the town of Menton. Remember when we discovered they were famous for their lemons? We then went on our search for a great lemonade and found ourselves on a street full of souvenir shops and boutiques, offering all sorts of products based on lemons and lavender. Prends ton temps is a phrase I've learned that day from those of you who speak French. It means take your time, and it was quite fitting for that day in Menton. We took our sweet time browsing the souvenir shops and staying at the beach and walking around the town. We've got separated for a bit before walking along the Promenade du Soleil. But we got reunited at the Menton sign on the beach. The beach there was excellent, and the bustling restaurants and pubs across from it were full of life. Remember Le Rond Saint-Michel, also known as the Escalier Jaune or Yellow Stairs? This monument dates back to the 18th century, the upper part of it at least. I've read that the lower parts, below Rue Longue, was destroyed during the Second World War and was later restored. The stairs offer some nice views as they're just a short walk away from the beach. Remember the nice warm tones that surrounded us as we were climbing them? Or the historic buildings that awaited us at the top? The Basilica of Saint-Michel-Archange being one of them, built in the 17th century. Prends ton temps remained our motto for that day, until it was time to go back to Monaco. It was on Wednesday, the 9th of July, that we visited the medieval village of Eze, perched high on the mountain, above the Mediterranean Sea. Remember how easy it was to let ourselves get lost on the narrow cobbled streets of Eze, with its stairs leading up and up? surrounded by stone walls ornated by colorful flowers and greenery, and lively boutiques, art gallery after art gallery after art gallery, or the occasional cafe and hotel or restaurant. It was full of life and wonder. Remember the exotic garden? I read that it's located on the site of an ancient medieval fortress that was destroyed in 1706. We've seen the multitude of plant species it offers, including cacti, succulents, yuccas, aloes, and lots of exotic plants from all over the world, as well as the statues placed among the rich vegetation. Positioned 429 meters above the sea, the garden offers one of the best panorama on the Riviera, and we made sure to take our time and enjoy the views. We saw the 18th century church from the top as well. Remember our plan for that day? We took a bus from Monaco to Eze up on the mountainside. And after visiting the village that day, we wanted to take Nietzsche's path down to Eze-sur-Mer and go to the beach there. Nietzsche's path connects Eze village from up on the mountainside with Eze-sur-Mer all the way down along the coast, in the form of a hiking trail that takes about an hour. As we were chatting and laughing and trying to watch our steps here and there among the rocks and branches, we stumbled upon a footpath sign that was unexpectedly, even bizarrely, fitting in that moment. If man is a bridge for man, his superhumanity is found in his friendships, is what I found myself reading out loud, feeling both weirded out by what I was saying and pleasantly surprised by the strange timing of its appearance. I've never read any of Nietzsche's work yet, even though I was holding this book for the sake of videography. It was brought by one of you guys, and you were still reading it back then. I've only later learned about his philosophy, that the way we are now as human beings is not a final form, not an end, but a bridge or rope, a transitional form between an animal and a superhuman, or Übermensch, a future, evolved, higher version of a human, which can be interpreted as a yearning for personal growth and becoming the best possible version of ourselves. The way I wanted to interpret that quote in my head then, and the way I interpret it now as well, is that true friends can help each other reach their full potential. Back then, however, I didn't know for sure what to think of it. And yet, standing in front of that sign with all of you, reading that one phrase out loud, then continuing to walk the same path together, just felt, and still feels, indeed, superhuman. Remember Eze-sur-Mer? With that train station we passed by near the beach? Or that restaurant we hopped in briefly that night, after I was stung by a jellyfish during my swim? We admired the sea at night, and those little lemon trees in front of the restaurant, Then took the bus back to Monaco. After saying goodbye to our Airbnb from near Monaco, we continued our journey to Cannes by train on Thursday, the 10th of July. Instead of a logbox we were used to, the keys to our Airbnb there were left with some shop owners a few streets away from the apartment. So we split up. Some of us went to pick up the keys, while the rest of us waited near the apartment with all of our luggage. Remember how hungry we were afterwards? We ended up grabbing some of the finest local delicacies and eating on the beach. We ate our fill of fried chicken, took a nap, went in for a dip, and just hung out till the sun was starting to set. After that, we kept walking along the shore, crossing yet another nice sport area, and stumbling upon a panorama wheel. We kept exploring the busy streets of Cannes. Admiring the architecture as the streetlights were starting to turn on for the evening. We were in the old town of Cannes, in the heart of Le district. Remember the church of Notre-Dame d'Espérance from the top of the hill? The church was completed in 1641. But on that evening, it was illuminated by a decorative purpley blue ambient light that was just starting to come to life, despite the persistence of the last remains of daylight. In its courtyard, an unexpected jazz concert awaited us. We wandered around, listening to the nice music, the band enhancing the purpley blue atmosphere with their instruments, the singer's voice echoing harmoniously between those ancient walls. Remember the panorama from there? And the full moon?
Life is a long road.
Outside the courtyard, from the top of an outer wall, we enjoyed a different angle of the city at night. Near the church, we saw the remnants of a medieval monastery, which currently houses the Museum of World Explorations. Leaving jazz and blues behind, we continued our evening walk, looking for a place to have dinner, then called it a night. On Friday, the 11th of July, some of us wanted to rent some kayaks and go to the island of Sainte-Marguerite, while others wanted to take the ferry there. So, after splitting up, and being unsuccessful in renting the kayaks because of the wind that day, allegedly, we took the ferry to the island as well. We remained separated and ended up exploring Ile Sainte-Marguerite all day. Enjoying the rich vegetation, foresty areas, and the medieval castle. After a quick swim, we took the last ferry back to Cannes. On the last full day of our Riviera trip, on Saturday the 12th of July, we finally managed to rent some kayaks. Remember what an adventure that was, my dude? Too bad I couldn't risk my camera getting wet, but hopefully these words and some of your photos will make up for it. After kayaking to the southern shore of Sainte-Marguerite Island, we snorkeled for a bit, looking for some underwater statues there. The statues are part of Jason de Cary's Taylor's first underwater museum from the Mediterranean Sea, and depict faces of people from Cannes, with varying ages. We found 2 out of the 6 statues, and I'll never forget the sight of that school of small fish swimming close to the eye of one of the big statue heads, about 3 to 5 meters beneath us. That night marked the end of our Riviera adventure, and one of us even had to leave earlier that morning. The rest of our group enjoyed a relaxing evening, and we found a place to eat some well-deserved protein. As I sat there, in front of a restaurant somewhere in the port of Cannes on the last evening, waiting for my food, sipping my beer, listening to your cheerful back and forths, while gazing at a palm tree's leaves fluttering in the wind, I couldn't help but think, it might not get any better than this. I was overwhelmed by how lucky I was to have you guys, and how much we've experienced together. Life can be cruel. It can. It was. It will be. But whatever may come, this is a reminder that we were truly happy, at least for a bit. And if I can promise you nothing else, I can at least promise you this. We lived. We lived. With everything we had, we lived. We lived. Thank you.